So thanks for joining us this morning. This morning we're going to run through our P6-Reporter engine that works, of course, with P6. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and I'm joining you today from Calgary. And with me doing the heavy lifting is Marilyn Backstrom. She's one of our implementation specialists, and she's joining from Edmonton. So we wanted to run through some of the typical struggles that we have as P6 users in terms of using all the fantastic information that we have inside of P6. So when you've spent energy creating schedules that are resource loaded and cost loaded, there's a lot of information there. And what we're trying to do is make sure that people know when they're supposed to be where, when they're supposed to have their deliverables ready. So communication is key, and managing the critical resources to achieve the project timelines is not necessarily, it's not a one-person job. So we need to make sure that we can communicate out all that great data that we've got inside of P6. So I thought I'd start with a quick question to the group, and feel free to answer it. I'm just curious, how do you handle reporting and dashboarding right now? So what we find is we've got clients either using Excel, maybe putting things out into Excel, maybe adding Power BI onto it, which was fairly common. I think especially with many groups moving into cloud environments, Power BI is becoming quite often used. And then in the older formats, we used to use Access databases. So these are some of the common ones, or whether you're just using P6 reporting. Okay, so I'll go ahead and show some of the results for those who were able to answer. It's very common that we can't necessarily get all the reporting we want straight out of P6. So add-ons are pretty common, and we have complex data. When you're looking at resource information in particular, what we call spreads, it's not easy to get at that data in a very clean manner, and it's even harder to give that data in a self-serve mechanism right from P6. So that is a struggle that we definitely have with P6. Now, P6 Web is quite good at giving that data out, but you need to get a license of P6, and sometimes people feel that's kind of expensive. So again, that's another reason why we need to get the extended team to be able to touch, see the data, work with it, figure out when they're going to get their team where. Okay, so giving more self-serve access is really what this webinar is going to be about. Now, for those who grab it out into Excel, and for those who grab it out direct from the database, what we have found on many occasions is your data is not always accurate, okay? Especially if you're relying on layouts, copying and pasting. So it is definitely open for error, and getting the spreads out in a way that's easy to consume is not simple, because there's a lot of things that are calculated in P6 on the screen as a user. You see it, but it's not necessarily saved in the database. So to replicate that accurately is not easy. So those are some of the things that we've seen people try to do with, Excel and things like that. However, there can be a lot of challenges on accuracy. And then having to massage data, one of our clients takes a whole copy of all the projects and reports straight off of those copied projects. These are things that are not that efficient. They're time consuming. It's easy to make mistakes. And it's also easy to give data that's not correct, and business decisions are being made off of that. Okay, and I've seen that before, where the resource reports were run with the wrong data, and business decisions were being made about who was going where, and the data was incorrect. Okay, so this webinar is going to help you look at how you can do a better job with some of Emerald's tools to make that reporting much easier and more seamless. Now, once you do that, this question becomes more important. So how often are you doing reporting? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that your team can have reporting that's self-serve, easy to produce, and much more timely. And so the question, of course, is do you do it monthly and weekly? Those are pretty common. And what we want to do is make sure that you can drive more and more to weekly and daily, much more. Okay, now daily is not always easy, but it can be achieved if you do integration. Okay, a few people were able to answer, which is fantastic. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help your team drive to more real-time, closer to real-time data, so that the benefits, of course, are being able to make better business decisions with more up-to-date, more accurate data. That's the whole objective here. So let's touch on how it works. So what we're focusing on in this webinar is what we call P6-Reporter. So P6-Reporter to us is two things that we preempt, we put together. So we have a tool called our warehouse, our EP data warehouse, that comes along with some pre-developed base queries, I guess is the best way to put it, so that if you want to tag on your own reporting engine, third-party reporting engine, whether it's an Oracle BI tool, whether it's Power BI, whether it's Tableau or any other commonly used tool on the market, you can take advantage of our pre-built warehousing functionality and then take advantage of our pre-built out-of-the-box queries, configurations, and then we would just peg in your specifics, okay? So because we don't know what your project codes are going to be, your activity codes are going to be, your resource codes are going to be, but we've got the framework already set up. So this is a launch into being able to produce reports into any tool that you want much, much faster. So that's really the way to look at this. So the key functionality is our snapshotting into our warehouse. This allows us to snapshot on a preemptive basis. So let's say you know you're going to do your updates every week. We can run the snapshotting automatically, or we can also allow you to do ad hoc snapshotting. Now, the key thing here is this takes away all the work that you're doing to push things into Excel or into Access or into other data warehouses that need to be built, set up, and all that. So that's what this tool is going to give you. And it allows us to snapshot not only the project itself, but baselines. So you can do impact analysis, you can do comparisons and overlays, and you're going to get accurate data with proper spreads. Okay, so this is a key thing. We've got the spreads coming out exactly the way that a user sees them in P6. Now, when we do the snapshotting, we also do what's called denormalization, and that's just a fancy word to say making the data easier to work with, okay? So rather than hundreds and hundreds of tables that you've got to work with if you were going to go on the back end of P6, we make that much, much simpler. So that's really the key here. And we take data across the most commonly needed components for reporting. So we've got project level data, task level, of course, the spreads that I keep mentioning, which are resources and expenses. So spreads are just time-based data. And probably last year now, we added calendar information and logic information for those who want to do analysis on changes to logic, changes to calendars. So this is getting more into a claim situation and our full-blown schedule analysis. So Marilyn's going to run through some examples of the data. She's going to show you some views, pre-built views, and she's going to show you the display that we've got some new displays to show you in this webinar. So in our past webinars, we use the Oracle data visualization tool, which is really, really nice tool. And in this one, we're going to show you Power BI. Okay, so these are just different reporting engines that we've plugged our reporting tools into. And then, of course, you can do ongoing data comparisons. You can do special KPI reporting that are specific to your corporate business and their requirements. So last quick question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mary Lynn, and she's going to give us a look. So do you do self-serve dashboards? That's the question. I'm kind of curious how far along some of the users are and whether you're doing different things. Yeah, so it looks like some people are definitely doing some dashboarding. And we have some clients that are still using reports out of P6 and sharing those. And so we've got a mixed bag, of course. Okay, great. So I think what we'll do now is I will hand it over to Mary Lynn, and she will give us a great deep dive on some examples. These are all food for thought. Okay, so this webinar is very much a food for thought webinar where we're going to show you ideas, some of the types of things that we've done for our clients, and then you can think about how these could be leveraged for your work environments. Okay, so I will hand it over to Mary Lynn. Okay, coming your way, Mary Lynn.
Okay, I'll just share my screen here. Okay, so what I want to have a look at, as Nicole was saying, some food for thought. So this is a few examples that we have, and we'll start at a higher level. So when you look at this, of course, you can see I've got the stack of the different dashboards and portfolio information down the left side. Well, the very top level, so if you have a case where somebody needs to see, or you want the whole team to see, or the whole company, depending on how you're putting out the information and what information exactly is in each one of these particular portlets on this dashboard. But if I'm a manager coming in and I'm looking at this, I can simply click on the management dashboard and I've got all this good information at my fingertips. So I can tell I've got late projects. So I know there's some I need to go and have a look at. I've got some roll-up information here. I've got projects amount over budget, over allocated hours, and then I've got specific milestones that I'm tracking across the bottom. So any of these, we can go in and have a bit of a closer look if you need to. So what I can do is I can go in and just open this a little bit bigger. Now, I realize that's probably not too helpful if you're looking at it on a TV screen on a wall, but the ability is there if you're looking at it, for example, on tablet, something like that. So if I'm looking at my milestones, this one is final tie-in complete. I can see really easily here what looks like is going to be issues and where am I hitting the timeframes that I should be, where am I not? So you can see, and if you hover over it, you can see exactly what's going on. So any of that information is available to you. You don't have to go and ask somebody to generate it. You don't have to go and dig through some reports, even if they're PDFs. If you have to dig through reports, that's more time, more frustration that you're going through. So you've got a lot of different pieces of information. This is all albeit, yes, at the high level, but we're going to drill down and show you how you can easily get to isolating what different issues actually are. Where are they coming from? What is actually happening? So we'll
So,
come, sorry.
Marilyn, let's just give them a bit of a lay of the land. So, so what we're showing you is an example of a drilling portfolio. So when you're doing drilling, you drill a well, and you also need to make a pipeline to connect the product back to pumping station and whatnot. Okay, so that's just giving you the lay of the land of what this is. So a well, it doesn't matter if they drill it if you can't tie it in. So that's what she was trying to show you for a tie-in, just so you understand that terminology. Okay, keep going.
Sorry, my fault. I apologize. I've been
All good. All
looking
good.
at the information a lot, so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
part
exactly.
sidestepped
Exactly.
me.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so we've got, as Nicole was saying, this is drilling. So we've got the management dashboard. Now I can go down, there's other dashboards created here. So I've got the pipeline dashboard. So if I'm looking at pipeline specific information, I've got very similar information, but again, it took me one click to get this on my desktop. Very easy. Now, if I need to take a closer look, you can definitely do that. I've even got pipeline crew activities. If I wanted to go in and have a closer look at that, I can definitely do that. And you can move across and have a look at where your activities are falling. Now, that's one that on the projects that I've been on, not specific drilling, but any project, that's something people are always looking for. And again, you've got the different milestones that you can track here as well. Now, same thing for the roads dashboard. So you can split up the different information and have it generated to the dashboards that you require. So we've got the roads dashboard, but much the same type of information available, but it's filtered on whether it's pipeline, whether it's roads, whether it's wells. That's the other one we'll have a look at. So you've got a lot of different information, and you can see how easily you just click from one to the other to see the information. Now, if we're looking at this information, so if I click on, for example, back on the management dashboard, I did say, okay, we've got some late projects here. Well, this is a roll up of everything. So if I'm a manager that's looking at this and I'm thinking, oh, okay, some of these are my projects. So let's go into the portfolio and see a little closer, drilling down a little farther, what's actually going on. So I'm going to click on portfolio dates, and I've got the projects, and here I've got the ability to slice and dice all of these as well. So if I'm looking at my portfolio dates, now I might be wondering, okay, I need a little bit more information about what's going on here. You can see I've got some late projects, I've got some early projects, and by the way, you can change the time frame that you want to look at as well. But if I'm wondering about, okay, I've got late projects, early projects, if I don't recognize or I'm not sure who the team is or what stage these projects are at, I've got that ability to kind of slice and dice that information as well. So if I go, for example, to stage and I just click the drop down here, you'll see we've got a lot of different elements in here. So you can click any one of those and have the information come to your screen. So if I looked at, for example, pad road planned, you'll notice it changes and I see, okay, pad road planned, these are the early projects. This is what they are assigned to for stage. So you know what's going on as far as that goes. Now, if we wanted to look at a slightly different set of information, so if I look at, for example, production inventory, you'll see that's where some of your late projects are coming from. So you can slice and dice, and you've got regions, you've got project type, you've got teams, all that type of information is available. So I could leave it on a specific stage and look at, okay, which teams are looking after that. Or if I want to look more at the top level and say, okay, I'm not going to filter the stage right now. Maybe I know that we have a specific team that's been struggling. So I'm interested in what projects are being affected. So if I'm looking at, for example, my North team, pretty much tells the tale. So if I look at, for example, another team, a little different results. But going down the list, you'll tell very quickly where the problems are happening as per what team is assigned that type of information. So you can slice and dice this a lot of different ways, and it can give you very quickly, as you've seen, some very, very valuable information. Now, you also have project type in here. So your projects, and these are drilling projects, so they've been tagged as you would for drilling, but this type of dashboard can be created for other project types as well if your industry is other than drilling. So if we want to go in, for example, and I wanted to look at wells, there's the late well projects. And if I wanted to look at, instead of wells, if I wanted to go to production, for example, here's my late production projects. So you can get an idea of how easy it is to actually slice and dice this information. It's all there for you on your screen, and if I remove all the filters, I've got the whole portfolio back. So you can get some very good insights really, really quickly as to, yes, I've got some issues here. So where do I need to focus my time to look at what's actually going on? Now, you'll notice here that we saw in the management dashboard, of course, this project was listed as late up there. It's showing up late here as well, as you would expect. So if I want to check, okay, we know we've got some projects that are late. We've got some that are early, and you usually, although early, everybody jumps to the conclusion it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but you want to watch what's going on in the background with those ones as well. So if I go into my portfolio costs here, so again, this is costing information. And I did really one click to go from dates to costs. And now I've got all the information for costs. Now, if I want to look at costs instead of every project that's in my portfolio, I want to slice and dice it a bit. So if I want to go in and pick something from stage. So I'm curious, how are my wells planned going? So I'm just going to click on that, and you can see all the information changed that quickly to roll up exactly the information from just my projects that are in this portfolio that have this stage assigned to them currently. Now, if I wanted to look at costs by team, you may run into a situation. I know I've run into this on projects I've been involved in where you want to check the stage, definitely, but you may need to look into what's going on with a certain team, because maybe you're finding all the reports are coming in and it looks like they're struggling. So I could go out and I could say, okay, I want all of the stages, and I can kind of redo my filtering, so to speak. I could say projects, okay, all the well projects for the North team, that type of scenario. So now what I'm looking at is all the project types, in other words, well projects, and I've got the North team selected. So you can, for example, maybe I want to look as well at the South team. You see my information is all changing in the background there. So I can close up the filter and I can just look at it. So you can get a really, really good idea here that this information is all in this particular case, as Nicole was saying, these projects have been snapshotted. There's been snapshots created for them. Now, how handy would it be to have all this information available at your fingertips? And as she said, these snapshots can be automated. So it's not another task that we're adding to your requirements. You set it up and you can come in and just look at the information. You know where you need to focus, where there is issues. So if I go and set this back to all, I can very easily go back to every bit of the information. Now, any of these, of course, just like we were looking at before, projects amount over budget. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, I need a little bit of a closer look to this because you can see these have slide bars down the side, again, you can pop them out. So you can look at them so that they're a little bit bigger on your screen. Maybe you need to go down and have a closer look at one of these and see what's going on. And just to mention as well, if you hover over the pieces in these graphs, it does try and give you the information that's available there. Now, clearly, it wouldn't be able to label this too well with it because the over budget piece on the graph is pretty small, but that information is still available to you if you hover over it. So if I click to go back to the report, now I can do that with any of these, and we have projects amount over budget. Now we also have projects percentage over budget. So if you need to look at that one, and you'll see that these all have the slide bar. So you may not be comfortable looking at them like that. I can totally get that. I probably wouldn't either. So I would probably do this, and then I can see the whole list. So you've got really good information available really easy. Now, we've looked at the dates, the costs. Now, if we look at our portfolio hours, so we've got it filtered back to all. So you can go through any of these topics and you can start filtering on what you need to see. And that is the best part. You don't have to, well, probably shouldn't say best, but it's a very handy piece to have because of the fact that how many times have you wanted a specific piece of information and maybe you don't have access to go into P6 and get it. Maybe you need to request it from somebody. You need to explain to them what it is you need to get. They have to go in and do it. Then you get the report back. It's all very labor intensive, takes time, all of that sort of thing. So if you can have it at your fingertips, so much the better. It's going to be way, way easier. So here's my portfolio hours. Now, again, you can filter by any of these particular elements, but just to show you one of them here, if I go in and I decide, okay, these are my portfolio hours for all of the projects, but I need this morning to look at wells standing cased. I want to look at that particular stage. So let's go down and just see what happens when we change to that. So you can go in and you can look at any of these pieces. So in this case, I have got a project over budget and I can see what project it is. I can see how far over budget. I also have a project under budget. You can see how far it is under budget. Now, forecast percent of the budget hours used, again, very, very handy information. And you also have budgeted hours status by team. So you notice that we have a slicer here for the team, and we can see that the central team is under budget. The north team, and that poor north team seems to be struggling a little bit, as we saw when we went through the information. But in this case, they are over budget. So again, very easy information to get to, but very handy to have. So depending on what you want to look at, if I wanted all up for a team instead of a specific stage, you can definitely do that as well. So I could take this back to everything. I could go to a project type or go to a team, depending on what you need to look at. But my point here, of course, is it's all right there for you. So just click the filters, set what you want, it's all there. So if we look at our North team here and we wanted to find out what is actually happening, you've got budgeted hours, status by team and project. So you can see here what is actually happening by the number of projects. So my North team does have a problem on three different projects. So if we want to go back and look at all of it again, we can definitely do that. Now, you've got some other slice and dice information here as well. So as you run this information, you also can set and filter on fiscal year, your project manager, that type of thing as well. So you can see where you can get very, very granular information depending on exactly what you're looking for, and you can get there yourself. And of course, that's why we always refer to these as self-serve dashboards. So if I want to look at milestone trending, this is another one that we have set up. Now, when you're doing drilling projects, there is a number of milestones that you're usually tracking very closely. And as in any type of project, you have your milestones you're going to want to look at. So for drilling, what you've got is, if I look at the milestone that's showing here right now, this is surface land start. Now, if I click the drop down here, you'll see there's a number of different milestones that you can track. So choose the one you want to have a look at. And then, of course, when we come to the graph, it's giving you the information. And you can see where ours is not tracking exactly as we would like it to in part of the graph here. But you also have at the side, you have your milestone date, you have your project, and you have your current status of the milestone. So some of these are actual and some of these are sitting in remaining. So it makes it a little bit easier to see exactly what's going on. So if I wanted to, excuse me, if I wanted to look at something a little bit different here. Now, if I left it on surface land start and I wanted to say, okay, let's look at this, but let's go in and pick projects that only are in a certain stage. I can go in and do that. Now I can also go in and pick the particular project type, any of that. So if I went in and I wanted to look at wells planned, for example, you'll see it changed a little bit because it's filtering for what I've asked it for. So the same as what we've looked at through a lot of these other dashboards, you do have a lot of different filtering, slicing and dicing available to you. And of course, like I mentioned before, the self-serve dashboard. Now, just before we go and look at the project piece, so we're drilling down. We've gone and looked at dashboards. This is a roll up of all the project information. Portfolios can be set, of course, for a specific group of projects. Now we've got another set here that is the projects themselves. So I know we've gone through a lot of information here in the meantime. So just temporarily, I want to go back up to the management dashboard we looked at first. Now, remember, we had some late projects here. So if I'm a manager coming in and looking at this, and I have one project here that is 68 days late, I may want to go in and dig into that. Very easily done. So what I can do is I know what project that is. I can go down to my projects here. And first of all, I'll go into the overview. Now, this particular one is already reflecting that project, but we can go in and we could have it set like the others at none, but it gives you access to every project that is in that particular snapshot. So we've just selected the project that we know is late, the one we want to focus on so we can see the information. So when we come in here, we've got a number of pieces of information right at our fingertips. So project percent, excuse me, project percent complete. You can see this project is not complete. It is 68 days late. This says days early, but with a negative in front of it, that is late. So we've got some other information here that you've got your SPI, your CPI, but you've got some gauges down the middle here. So cost versus budget. So it's telling you what's happening here. So my at completion is larger than my budget. Total labor hours. Well, the labor hours are not over budget. And of course, days duration versus budget, we already know it's late. So that one doesn't really come as too much of a surprise to us. Now, from here, this is the high level information for a project. So let's go have a look at what we can see in the labor hours. So I'm just going to click on the labor hours one. Again, it's going to hold the filter for you unless you change it. So you can definitely go and look at a different project while you're in here if you need to, not a problem. So if I look at this particular dashboard, I've got total labor hours versus budget, similar to what we saw on the overview. I've got labor hours under budget, and I've got activities over labor budget. We don't have any. So of course this portlet's not showing anything. But if we come down to the activities under labor budget, you can see that we've got a couple of activities that are under budget. But we still had a problem with our costs when we looked at the overview. So if we want to find out exactly what's generating that, a very easy way to do that is let's just go to the next project dashboard. Same project, I haven't changed the filter. So if I look at this particular dashboard, now it's becoming very, very evident. We knew what was going on before at a high level, but now you can see it in much more detail. So I've got total cost versus baseline. Okay, cost has a problem. But we did say that our labor costs weren't the issue. Well, you've got your total cost variance, but you've got cost by category available to you. So I can see cost by category, and I can tell right away it is my material cost that is causing the issue. So I definitely have some cost problems on this particular project. This dashboard tells you right away, it's not labor, it's your material. I've got activities over budget. So I've got a list of activities I can check into. And activities under budget, these are the ones that we looked at before. The pipeline construction and drilling are listed as under budget. So this gives you a really quick reference to now we know where the cost issue is generating from, definitely. So from there, what we can do is just have a look at under projects, of course, you can drill down to all the different pieces. So let's have a look at the activities. Now, again, I'm still looking at the same project. So if I'm looking at this project and I want to look at the activities, well, this brings right to your fingertips late activities, late critical, early activities. We don't have any early critical, but it would if there was some in that file. You have the project count, finish date status, early activities, on time, late activities, and it gives you counts. And you've got critical activity count, same idea, roll-ups. So you can look at the details of your activities as well. And again, I'm just going through this whole project piece with one of the projects that we knew was late in the first place, but you can definitely go in, and filtering is available there as well, so you can look at any of them. Now, we also have a Gantt. So if I go to the Gantt dashboard, now for the Gantt dashboard, if we wanted to look at a project type, I'm looking at all of them now, and you may be thinking, "Oh, she doesn't have any activities on here." You're right. You're not seeing any because I need to move the timescale. Not sure why that showed up. My apologies. Just let me get. It looks like I got kicked out of here. Sorry. Just bear with me a second. I will stop sharing and get back into the report. I'm not sure exactly why that kind of unceremoniously exited me out, but I will get back in there.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, um, the questions are on fire here, Marilyn. So let me just run through a few of the questions that have been coming up. So Ali is asking about the milestones that you're showing. So let's talk about usually the way that we work with milestones. So you may have a lot of milestones in your project, and so, depending on how you build it, you don't necessarily need every single one of those milestones to be presented as key milestones in your dashboarding. So typically, we use milestones plus we usually use some activity codes. So for example, in electrical, it might be an in-service date, or it could be when an engineering package is complete. So issued for construction could be another key one that you might use. So you can name the milestone in service and you can name it issued for construction. However, having an activity code that's crystal clear, that's consistent, is usually the way to go to make your reporting easier. Okay, so that's one that we had a few questions on. Now, another really good question that Andrew threw in the chat was um, the idea of how do you make sure that you're dealing with different coding structures, different cost coding. And this is particularly important when you're doing a portfolio type report, okay? So if you're just working with one project, that's not such a big issue. It's when you've got a portfolio going across. So we've dealt with this with a few of our larger corporate clients. Suncor is one that comes to mind, where we made, through our P6 calculator tool, we made some common automated strategies on dealing with different coding structures, okay? Because that can be a challenge, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you can do it manually, but good luck keeping that up to date. Okay, so we used our calculator, which has automations in it, to do that. And dealing with different cost accounting would probably be the same sort of strategy. And something to keep in mind for those of you that may not have been aware is in some of the latest versions of P6, Oracle added some great features. So the role coding, resource assignment coding, which allows you even more flexibility on some of this. So some of I think they started that in version 20, and of course, anything in the cloud over 2021 will have those additional codings. Plus, they've also added the ability to do role limits and role costing to change over time. So these are important things if you're trying to do better cost control, better resource control in P6. Okay, so I think I've kind of touched on some of the questions that were coming through. Okay. Are you back in?
I think so. We have a little dialog box that doesn't wanna go away, but we're gonna
Okay.
just,
Ignore it.
ignore it and
Okay.
carry on. I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure why. I've never seen that happen before, to be very honest, so
Oh,
I'm not sure
well.
what that
It's
is.
a Microsoft product. What can you say? Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so the Gantt chart is another one I just wanted to show people. And this one I find really, really interesting myself. I've had many, many occasions where I've had to create this out of P6. I'm not saying you can't, but let me tell you, it's a bit of work. So, having this at your fingertips, again, very handy because what you can do is you can take these particular projects and which projects do you want to look at? Well, that's your choice. So first of all, we're looking at all of them. So we've got a few resources selected. They become color coded on the activities and it's still against the time frame. So you can go in and you can filter on specific ones. So it just makes it so easy compared to doing this out of P6 yourself, because as I say, I've had to do this out of P6. So if we go in and, for example, if we only want to look at a certain project type here, and we can select or deselect whichever resources we want to see as well. And if we move back and forth, you'll see in your time frame, they will show up. Now, if we go in and I only want to look at certain project types. So I may be wanting to look just at wells, for example. And I can go in and I can look at those particular resources on just the project type of wells. Or I may want to go by stages instead. Again, I can do that really easily, and this is all tracking it for me behind the scenes. I don't have to go back into P6, create another filter, create another bar configuration, anything like that. It's all here. It's just waiting to display whatever it is I need displayed. So for example, if I'm looking at well planned and I'm looking at those resources and like I say, just a checkbox is going to display them or take them away. Here's my time frame with the information displayed, and I'm just going to collapse this particular one, so you can see where your surveys are. You can see where regulatory fits into this. You can see where you need your piping crews. All very, very visual and very, very easy to get to. So this was another one that I wanted to make sure that people got to see. Now, I realize we're kind of getting towards the end of time, but there is another one I do really want to show you because this one, again, as well, is so handy. So, what I want to do is go to resource allocation. Now, when we're looking at resource allocation, you may look at this and you may think, okay, we've got the same type of scenario as we have in P6. Not quite. If I go in, you've got resource and you've got actual remaining over allocation and your limit. Now I can choose what resource. So this particular one is showing for regulatory resource. But if I go in here and I wanted to use drilling crew, for example, instead, it's all going to change. But also up here, I've got the projects list is changing. And I'll just click out of there so that you can see what's in the top here as well. So you've got over allocated hours. You've got your projects by the resource that you're showing over the time scale. So if I wanted to just pop this out so you can see it a little bit better, you can definitely do that. Or I can go back and maybe the drilling crew isn't the one I need to look at. Maybe I need to look at the pipeline crew. I've got my pipeline crew information depending on who's looking at the dashboard, who needs to see the information, what are they focusing on. So you can see when I set it to pipeline crew, It's listing the projects up in the top right corner here, and you'll notice one of them has changed color. Well, it's changed color because this one is complete. So these are even tracking actual, remaining, and over allocated. Now I have a slide bar here, so I can go up and down to see, or like we looked at before, I can pop this out and see it a little bit bigger if that particular one is helpful. Now, over allocated hours, you've got this particular one is by quarters, but it's tracking over allocated hours for you as well. Now, you might think that that is all the reports that we have set up. It totally is not. There's a number of other reports set up, and you can see there's another section. You might be wondering what's in green-ups. This has been set up as well. So this more leads towards tracking equipment, for example, on a turnaround. But just so you're aware, our top section here is created on the drilling projects, but you can create these dashboards for any type of project. So for example, not to spend a lot of time on it because I realize we're getting to the end of our time here, but for example, if I'm looking at control valve summary, you can create this type of scenario again from your P6 information. This is another one I've had to create several times for different pieces of equipment, summaries of where they're at in your schedule. And you can definitely do that. And it's again a self-serve dashboard. So there is a lot of different options. So as Nicole said, food for thought. Are you looking for the management, the portfolio, and the project? I would imagine most companies are. So you can go in and you can have these created and set up. And as she said at the beginning, these are the ones we've gone through here are drilling projects. But these type of dashboards can be set up for whatever type of projects you're looking after. So on that note, my apologies, it's 5:02, but I will
No, it's
stop
good.
sharing and send it back to Nicole to wrap it up.
Just on those green ups, that one that Mary Lynn showed you, if you printed that from P6, in some cases for our clients, those could be 50 pages worth of Gantt, right? That you can consolidate down to a very, very quick chart or table with the color coding. And, what you're trying to do is get something that your manager can touch and see immediately within 5 seconds where the problems are. That's really what you're trying to achieve. And that's not easy using a simple Gantt. So those Gantts that she was showing you, I mean, there's a variety of plugins that exist with Power BI and with all of these. So the Gantts are not always quite as nice looking, but the point is it gets more of a self-serve approach for the folks that are running the crews out in the field, which is, again, the whole objective here is to make sure they know where they need to be and when. Okay, so we took a look. So I think let's just touch on some of the benefits and what you need to consider when you're going into dashboarding. So the benefits are generally quite obvious because it's very visual. We want to be more efficient. We want to make sure the reporting is done very streamlined. Okay, so a snapshot is taken, the data is taken in a clean manner. Nobody having to run filters and this and that to get it the way that you need for reporting. You don't need to be worrying about field name changes and all these sorts of things that you get into when you're building out different reports. The data, as I mentioned, is denormalized, so it's much easier to work with. And we've given a bunch. We've packaged already a bunch of very common strategies on getting the data, so it makes your launch off point much quicker. in terms of building out your reporting dashboard. And it's in terms of the way that you work with it, it gives the folks a much easier way to work on information. Okay, so it's easy to consume when you put it into these different types of reporting engines that are all built to make it easier to consume. So it's really the accessibility. I've mentioned the accuracy, so that's an important piece. The accuracy in the data is a big win on using the data warehouse and then pushing it into your reporting engine. Getting spreads, if you're going back end, getting spreads, you're gonna have a hard time. So we've already done that heavy lifting. So we've got a bunch of different case studies, but I like to touch on a few that are a little different. So one of the clients that we worked with to put together special dashboards was Thales. They have a lot of special resources. They do aerospace. The group we were working with was their aerospace group. They do have a lot of specialty resources, and they needed to see the data in a way that P6 could not bring it together. They needed resource type codes, specialty items on activities, and so on. So the real benefit that they gained on using our data warehouse and putting the data into, at the time it was our dashboard tool, was the ability to forecast the resource requirements. And their projects have a lot of big penalties on them because they're dealing a lot with defense type contractor construction. So they really had to make sure that they hit their timelines. So they just had much better visibility, a lot less effort, and they could do much more what-ifing much quicker with the warehouse pulling the data into the different dashboarding that they needed. You saw a few quotes from Suncor. So Suncor is our longest term client and our biggest client. So I mentioned that we did some of the configurations for their coding using our calculator to make sure their coding was all consistent, to make sure that their snapshotting was consistent, and getting the reporting out very quickly. It's all automated, which is the key thing here. So the management team can get at what they need anytime very quickly. And some of the dashboarding that we helped them put together included counting for safety requirements, safety reporting as well. Okay, so once you've got a good framework, the kind of reporting can go in many directions. And in their example, we were also doing reporting on safety. So that gives you some food for thought. Looks like there's a question, so let me just come in here. Okay, does this reporting also include scheduled quality health check functions? Okay, so that's a good question. So we have another software tool called our P6QA. So our P6QA automates a lot of quality metrics that can then be reported out very readily. So the answer is, in and of itself, the metrics are not there. Our QA tool would give you the metrics and then you can report out. So a two-pronged approach. Doesn't, not to say you couldn't build quality metrics, but you would need to build that out, okay? So it may make sense to look at QA and piggyback the quality metrics reporting on top of that. So we do have some examples of that. I don't think they're in the Power BI. They're probably in our Oracle data visualization. So if you're interested in more of that, send us an email after the session and we can give you some more examples on that. So I think that's all the questions. And so I think I've answered all the questions. Now, if there's any more that come to mind, go ahead and throw those in there. And I do want to thank you for spending the last hour with us. Hopefully there has been some good food for thought on some of the things your team could explore doing with their P6, and hopefully Emerald can give you some assistance there. Not only we've been doing this kind of work with P6. We've been a partner with Primavera and then Oracle for 27 years. So it's been a long journey and an excellent, very exciting career path for me. And I love what we do because we help people do better with the tools that they've got. We've always had programmers on our team, so that's why we have so many offerings to help you with your P6, not only on our add-on tools, but we've been doing integration since we've started. And that's really where we love to improve on what you can do with the Oracle suite of products. So we do have P6 calculator webinars on our plate next week for Wednesday. So if you're interested in some of that concept, some of the automations, that would be a good one to join into. And in the new year, we'll have more on our P6 QA. And another one that's pretty handy if you're administering P6 is our Scrubber tool. So these are some additional things you can explore to make your life better in P6. Now I've got Mary Lynn's contact info there. If you're in APAC, we've got our rep Donna in Philippines who can help you. So these are just some contacts that you can get in touch with if there's some more things you want to explore. So I think we can wrap it up there. I don't see any additional questions that have come through, and I think I've answered all the ones that came in through the question chat. So thanks so much for your time. Have a wonderful day, and feel free to reach out if there's some more things you want to explore. Thank you.